As we've heard, the Greens have rejected the forest peace deal. I spoke to Tasmanian Greens leader Nick McKim a short while ago and asked him why.
Well, look, ultimately, Rebecca, this is a deal between Labor at a state level and Labor at a federal level. This deal hasn't been signed off on or endorsed by the Greens, and ultimately what it does is offer a large degree of certainty for the timber industry in Tasmania, but very little or no certainty for conservation outcomes in terms of our beautiful ancient forests.
What sort of pressure is this likely to place on the Labor-Green government?
Look, I think the relationship between the Greens and Labor is strong. The model we have very clearly allows for policy differentiation between Labor and the Greens and for an agreement, if you like, to disagree on policy. But again, what we're focused on here is delivering outcomes for our forests. That's a core issue, of course, for the Greens. It's something that many of us have campaigned on for decades now, and unfortunately there is not a high enough level of certainty in the agreement announced today that we can go forward with confidence and
If I could interrupt you briefly there, will you be supporting more protests in the forests?
Well, look, it's not a question of supporting protests or otherwise, but what I can say is that I would be very surprised if this agreement announced today led to peace in the forest debate, because there is so much uncertainty around the conservation outcomes from the agreement.
So how then can this Labor-Green government continue to work?
Well, we can continue to work in the way that we have in the past, where we've had policy disagreements, and that's to focus firstly on the matters that we agree on and progress those issues in terms of a progressive public policy agenda. On those issues on which we disagree, and there may be some issues that we will disagree on that will flow from this agreement, we'll reserve the right, in terms of the Greens' view, to support some legislation that flows from this process. We also reserve the right to oppose any legislation that flows from this process that we don't agree with.
Certainly. But does this mean you're going to be trying to unravel the peace deal?
What we'll be trying to do is work constructively to deliver the maximisation of the conservation outcomes from this process. As I said, that's our job, that's what people expect us to do, and that's what we'll be doing.
If I could ask you again, does that mean you're going to work at unravelling it?
It's not a question of ravelling or unravelling. Our job is to maximise the conservation outcomes and also the economic transition outcomes and the possibilities in those areas that exist from this deal. But there are no certainties in terms of the conservation outcomes, but we'll be working to maximise those outcomes. And we also want to play a constructive role in diversifying the state's economy, because we do have an economy in transition in Tasmania. That transition is already underway. There will be, I hope, opportunities that exist out of this agreement to continue that transition, and we'll be supporting those as we move forward.
But this deal has been done. What more can you possibly do?
There's a lot to be done. This deal is a heads of agreement, and there'll be work, no doubt, underway over the next couple of weeks to fine up some of the detail around this. But of course, as is the case with all heads of agreement, it's not strong on detail, and the devil can often be in the detail. Can I say, we are disappointed that this was rushed through today, and it was rushed through today because we genuinely thought with a little bit more time we could have come up with a much more workable and much more enduring outcome that would have actually had the chance to end the division around forests in Tasmania.
But can you spell out what your course of action is going to be?
Well, I just have.
You haven't said exactly how you're going to maximise green interests.
Well, what we're going to do is work constructively through the processes available to us, and that's public debate, the parliamentary debate, votes on the floor of the House, and with our access into government to maximise the conservation outcomes available. What we have from this agreement is simply the establishment of a process to deliver reserves. I hope that we see a significant amount of reserves coming through, particularly national parks and World Heritage areas, as part of this process. There are no guarantees, but we will be working to maximise the conservation outcomes.
And we'll see how that goes. Nick McKim, thank you very much.